Yes, hello. Good evening to all of you, and thank you for coming. So I'm very honored and proud to say this is the first event that the ESN Group, a working group on freedom of speech, organizes tonight. So thank you so much for coming. Yeah, as you may know, we are going to have a discussion we should not need to have. It's a discussion on free speech, or more precisely, the liberty of free speech. Freedom of speech should be self-evident, but it's not granted for free. It should be the bare minimum of any Western democracy, yet it remains fiercely contested, increasingly fragile, and ever more necessary to defend. The internet has a famous bon mot. You can have a discussion about free speech, or you can have free speech. So here we are having a discussion about free speech. And if the internet is correct, which it always is, as we all know, that means we do not have freedom of speech. Many of us still enjoy the legal right to express our opinions, but the consequences of doing so, be it professional ruin, social ostracism, or deplatforming, can be severe. We find ourselves in a paradox where speech is technically free, yet costly to exercise. In some cases, it is even criminalized. And if free speech is criminalized, can we really still call it free? Take, for instance, a German citizen who recently learned this lesson the hard way. He posted a meme in which he referred to the outgoing Minister of Economy, Robert Habeck, as a Schwachkopf, loosely translates into moron, idiot. You could, of course, argue that this was an insult. In this particular case, however, I would call it a factually true and accurate statement. Be that as it may. In Germany, such an insult is not just a matter of civil liability, it is a crime. One morning, this citizen then had to find out the hard way, and he had a rude awakening by a police unit raiding his home, seizing his computer equipment, and charging him with a criminal offense. Now, say what you will about Robert Habeck, but when politicians need SWAT teams to protect them from mean words, it doesn't exactly inspire confidence in their resilience. Now, does it? The case serves as a stark reminder that threats to free speech do not only come from social pressure, but also from government action. It reminds me of the chilling words of the 20th century dictator Idi Amin, who once remarked, "Oh, there is freedom of speech. I just cannot guarantee freedom after speech." And perhaps even worse, governments are now intruding into social media, attempting to control what information is uploaded, shared, and seen. The European Union, and unfortunately a majority of the members of the EU Parliament, firmly believe that disinformation must be banned. Yeah, you heard that right. They believe in, advocate for, and implement censorship, because that's what it is. Next problem, who decides what disinformation is? Yeah, once again, you guessed right. The ones in power decide what is deemed disinformation in an attempt to protect their narrative and their agenda. Remember the mantra-like repetition of mRNA injections are safe and effective? We all know today that these jabs were neither safe nor effective. It was a blatant lie. It was disinformation spread by those who ruthlessly persecuted everyone who contradicted their narrative by simply claiming they were spreading hate and disinformation. But I maintain, had there been free speech during this pandemic, it would have saved millions and millions of lives. And until a few years ago, differing opinions were not only considered normal, it was considered essential to finding out the truth. Now anyone who challenges the dominant view of the EU is labeled either a Russian influence agent, anti-scientist, anti-European, or worse. But does it not all depend on who is right and who is wrong? And who exactly gets to decide that? And how do we even find out? George Orwell, in his chillingly prophetic novel 1984, described how Minitrue, the Ministry of Truth, did not merely control information, but shaped reality itself, ensuring that the certain truth became unspeakable. Today, we do not need a Ministry of Truth. When we have the European Commission, the Digital Services Act, the social mechanism that enforce ideological conformity just as effectively. But the point is simply this: the very essence of free speech, that it must be exercised, and in a way that is boldly, unapologetically, and without reservation. It must apply not only to speech we agree with, it must apply to speech we find deeply unsettling. And most importantly, the right to free speech must never be restricted by just speech we agree with. To say it with George Orwell, if free speech means anything at all, it means the right to tell people what they don't want to hear. Yes, and the right to free speech absolutely includes the right to offend. The right to free speech is a crucial prerequisite for democracy, and yet it is claimed that restriction of free speech is necessary to protect democracy. But let's be clear. Those who violate and seek to restrict freedom of speech are not afraid for democracy. They are afraid of democracy. This is precisely the message that J.D. Vance delivered at the Munich Security Conference. He criticized Europe for its stance on free speech, or, let me put it this way, for its habit of having endless discussions about free speech while passing endless laws restricting it. From an American point of view, we in Europe do not enjoy free speech at all. We merely debate it. So tonight, we are so fortunate to hear from Desiree Fixler, someone who has experienced firsthand the cost of speaking truth to power. Desiree is a free speech activist. She is no stranger to power. As a former group sustainability officer at the DWS, the asset management arm of the Deutsche Bank, she operated at the highest level of global finance. She was at the forefront of the ESG movement, environmental, social, and governance, which was supposed to align corporate investment with ethical responsibility. Some of you, some MEPs in the audience, might have even been involved in shaping these laws. But ESG has become less about responsibility and more about control. A mechanism to impose political and ideological standards under the guise of virtue. It has enabled corporate elites and commission bureaucrats to dictate economic and social behavior without democratic accountability. Many of us here are skeptical of ESG, not because we oppose ethical business, but because we recognize it as a tool for coercion, not genuine progress. Desiree saw this from the inside. She exposed the hypocrisy and empty promises behind ESG investing, revealing how major firms were misrepresenting their sustainability claims while profiting from the illusion of corporate virtue. She did what any rational person should do. She told the truth. And for that, she was fired. Because in the world of ESG, optics matter more than reality. Her case is just one example of how those in power do not want accountability, they want compliance. ESG is supposed to be about transparency, yet those who expose its flaws and find themselves punished, silenced, and sidelined. Desiree's story is not about saving ESG from corruption. It is about revealing ESG as corruption. It is about how those who claim to fight for progress actually use that claim to consolidate power. It is about the growing tension between those who believe in open discourse and those who seek to control it. And so tonight we are very honored to hear from someone who has challenged the system and who has paid the price for exercising her right to free speech. Desiree Fixler understands that freedom of speech is not merely an intellectual exercise, it is a battle. And tonight she will share with us why this battle is not only worth fighting, but why it is a battle that needs to be fought. So please join me in welcoming Desiree Fixler.
Christine, thank you so much. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for this invitation to speak. So I'm a libertarian conservative. I am a patriotic American. And while I believe I'm in a friendly room, my work that brings me to the United Kingdom and to Europe is, it's sad to say, it is behind enemy lines. That's what it feels like. My views push me there. I believe in border control. I believe in low tax regimes. I believe in national pride. I believe in affordable energy. I believe in small government. And I ardently believe in free speech. So, as Christine has spoken about last month, we're all aware, Vice President J.D. Vance stood before Europe's elite at the Munich Security Conference and sounded the alarm, a siren call, a real wake-up call that Europe and the United States are diverging on what has actually been unifying us for decades, diverging over democratic principles and the blessing of liberty. The biggest threat to Europe, he warned, is not Russia or China. It's a retreat from fundamental values, effectively a retreat from free speech. Now, we're all very familiar with all the prosecutions of hate speech happening all over Europe. In Germany, police smashed doors, insulting folks that post insulting stuff online. Politicians prosecute insults like it's a sport. 16 government units stand ready in Germany. These are units of surveillance and prosecution teams stand ready to raid, arrest, punish citizens for online hurtful posts. Thousands are being arrested. And they're being arrested for such trivial things as calling a politician fat. I mean, that's crazy. Yet Germany, and we saw this just a few days ago, at the same time, allows a Dusseldorf parade to smear Elon Musk and AfD party lead Alice Weidel as Nazis. Germany continues and consistently labels President Donald J. Trump as a fascist. Again, the hypocrisy is staggering. And as Christine rightly questioned, who is determining what is hate, what is insulting, what is disinformation? The elites, algorithms, political parties, partisan judges. These censorship arbiters decide what is right and wrong, supporting policies such as open borders, climate alarmism, while shutting down criticism of the harmful outcomes of these policies. It's become a moral superiority board, if you will, that allows genuine conservative parties, populist movements like the farmers, MAGA supporters in America to be deemed right, far right, Nazi, fascist, again, hypocrisy is staggering. We understand why Europe and the UK enacted these safety laws. And it was for protection. People need to be protected, to curb incitement, shield people from extremism, prevent totalitarian ideologies. But the premise is flawed. It's rooted in a distrust of the people. It assumes we're too weak to hear the truth. We're too weak to debate. We're too fragile to hear dissent or insults. These safety measures create the very tyranny they claim to prevent. To think censorship is objective, to think there's free speech with the elimination of hurtful speech is quite frankly delusional. Let's be clear, America slipped too. Under former President Joe Biden, the US veered off course as well. The White House leaned, and Christine spoke about this, on Twitter, pre-X, to censor COVID skeptics and flag misinformation on Facebook. There was even in 2021 in the US a call for a disinformation governance board. Silence those and smear those that claim COVID came from the Wuhan lab down the street. Hello, it did. It was a chilling nod to a police state. That wasn't liberty, it was a collision course with democracy, proving even the US can falter. But here's what's so important, what makes the difference: self-reflection. The ability to rethink things. And by the way, it happened to me. I was totally sold on the woke agenda. I supported net zero, DEI, let's save the planet and people. It felt so good to say win-win. Make money while doing good. I felt like my chest puffed out. It was amazing. Win-win. But like many former US Democrats, not the concept party, I was a vowed Democratic voter, you start to see the results roll in. You look at data, research, and you just look at what's happening around you. And common sense kicks in. From lockdown to a doubtful COVID vaccine to censorship, all of our affordability issues, to open borders, and you start to what's called red pill. You wake up. And for me, I woke up and I could see I was wrong. I was misguided. So I'm a banker by background. So please indulge me with this quote. Lloyd Blankfein, who's the former CEO of Goldman Sachs, said something very profound. And you might, recognize Goldman Sachs as a giant vampire squid, this evil company. It's just a Wall Street, behemoth. But Lloyd Blankfein said something so beautiful. And here it is. The best traders aren't right more than they're wrong. They are quick adjusters. They are better at getting right when they're wrong. They're quick adjusters. They're better at getting right when they're wrong. America adjusted. Biden's out. The disinformation board squashed. Crazy government overspend is being reined in. And very importantly, censorship in America is in retreat. Yet Europe is running in the opposite direction, doubling down on its assault on free speech. Now, we know the history. We know where human ingenuity comes from. Whether it's Copernicus to Edison to Musk, it springs from free thinking, critical thinking, not mandated truth. Europe shouldn't fear its citizens. We are the amazing people. We progress because we speak, we sometimes defy, and most importantly, we innovate. Censoring hate, censoring speech, risks censoring genius. Milton Friedman absolutely nailed it when he said the following: one of the great mistakes is to judge policies by their intentions rather than their results. So let's take a look. We understand the intentions of censorship, of laws on hateful speech, is intended to protect people. It's intended to do good. Well, let's take a look at the results. How is Europe doing? Let's take a look at, I don't know, let's start with the economy. How is it doing? Well, productivity is flatlining in this continent. GDP growth is a pittance compared to the US. Germany is going to go into its third year of shrinkage. Affordable energy from the Green Deal? Energy prices are a multiple of what they cost in the US. And let's look at regulation. All these safety regulations, digitally and ESG, what has it yielded? It's yielded hardship. It hasn't yielded welfare. It hasn't yielded freedom. It's yielded hardship. Results are in. Government control does not work. The US has a lot of problems, but in the US, there is now optimism with the change of the regime. Americans accept that liberty is sometimes really messy and chaotic. And guess what? We have neo-Nazi rallies. We say crazy shit on X. 500 million plus posts a day. Crazy stuff is said. But we trust people to debate and discuss and to self-correct. Supreme Court Justice Anthony Kennedy said it best: the right to think is the beginning of freedom, and speech must be protected from the government because speech is the beginning of thought. Thought births freedom. Speech ignites it. If Europeans really want to censor and go nuts on censorship and really want to protect people, how about censoring Brussels bureaucrats? Here is dystopian acronyms: CSDDD, CBAM, SFDR, CSRD, DSA, DMA. Really, truly dystopian acronyms. These acronyms and policies gravely harm people. Energy prices soaring, economic decline, jobs vanishing. Now, that's hate speech worth banning. But, of course, I'm a free speech advocate, so hyperbole and kidding aside, or maybe not, this topic, of course, hits home to me. And that's the main reason why I am here and why I'm an advocate of free speech. So while I mentioned that I was part of this whole woke movement, I achieved my dream job. I was the Chief Sustainability Officer at Deutsche Bank's roughly $1 trillion asset manager. But I exposed the ESG movement as a scam, as a bureaucratic tax on society. I raised all of the fraud issues internally, and I was fired. My concerns were dismissed, and my job was dismissed. The company actually took a few extra punches at me. Not only did they fire me, they publicly smeared me. They went to the press first and said I was unethical and I underperformed. I didn't know what to do. I was in Frankfurt. This is 2021. The German regulator at the time was like knee-deep in Wirecard and totally untrustworthy. The BaFin has a reputation at actually exposing whistleblowers instead of protecting them. So I figured my best bet, let me go to the to the media. This is a big story. I gave this story to the Süddeutsche Zeitung. And let me tell you something, it was a nail biter. I didn't know, I mean, oh my God, like here's all the evidence. I'm now in the public domain. Are they going to cast me as a disgruntled former employee? You know, how is this going to roll? Which side are they going to come out on? And I waited, and I waited, and I waited. And I took phone call after phone call and gave them tons of documents. And you know what happened? Nothing. Crickets. Nothing. They squashed the story. But it just so happens, I have a friend. And just so happens, Jerry was a prominent or is a prominent journalist. You might have heard he used to run an American newspaper called the Wall Street Journal. So I went to dinner with Jerry, and I gave Jerry the story. And like a whipsaw, like I remember we were sitting outside, it was like the COVID days outside in a New York restaurant, and he was leaning back, and he just like came forward so abruptly and quickly and said the Wall Street Journal would love to investigate this story. Well, they took it, and the rest is history. A crazy series of dramatic events unfolded. The Wall Street Journal came out, investigated, and came out on my side. The American authorities, the SEC, the FBI, and the DOJ jumped in. They rendered guilty verdicts. The Bundeskriminalamt in Germany opened up a criminal investigation that's still ongoing. And the bad people, not all of them, but most of them, got fired. But here's the most important thing about speaking up. It wasn't to get the bad people fired, or even, like, I was happy to receive validation, but it was actually to pop the green bubble, to expose ESG for the fraud that it is. ESG, net zero, and its DEI component harms society. It's nothing but a multi-trillion-dollar marketing scam that sought to overcharge and swindle investors under the guise of virtue to save the planet and people. So I am an ardent critic of ESG and DEI. While this ESG nonsense, thankfully, or lunacy, is going away stateside, there still is an awful lot of work to be done here in Europe and in the UK. The US is right now, and I'm very proud to say, retreating from collectivist overreach, racist, equal DEI, equal outcome policies, and economy-killing net zero nonsense. Because free speech laid them bare. Folks spoke up, folks questioned, folks voted for common sense. Europe insists on picking on X and Elon Musk for hate speech and disinformation. Try going on LinkedIn, if you're familiar, as a conservative. Let me tell you something. You go on LinkedIn and you question the climate hoax, you can't believe the hate speech that you receive. Oh, but according to the censor boards, that's okay. A democracy that can't handle debate is no democracy. America's messier path trusts human nature, and we are flawed. It trusts that we are course correcting when we stray. Online, that trust powers truth. X's rawness and conviction is so much better than LinkedIn's conformity, and judge by the results. In the US, we mark to market. We adjusted, we listened to people. But right now we're at a fork in the road, a crossroad testing Western values, testing US and European bonds. Vice President Vance's call isn't divisive. It's a plea to Europe to remember our shared democratic soul, not some elite left-wing power grab. Our people's liberty binds us to choose peace over war, to choose economic prosperity over decline, and to be proud of our national identities. So in closing, I have one more personal story. I'm going to end on a happy note. So, as you might know, New York is very liberal, is very Democrat. And in the last election, my family, in particular my father, supported a Republican congressman in the 17th district. That's downstate New York. Oh my God, it's so liberal. And, you know, it was hard. It took a lot of campaigning. But guess what? That district, that Democrat stronghold, that was overturned. And Congressman Mike Lawler is our congressman today. And so my point is that anything is possible. If you can overturn a stronghold, a Hillary Clinton stronghold, a Biden stronghold in downstate New York, anything is possible. We just can never stop speaking up. We must always speak up and cherish free speech. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Desiree, for sharing all of that, and I'm particularly grateful that you did end it on a positive note. And I just, would like to say I'm actually jealous of you guys, the Americans at this point. You may know I used to live in California. For 6 years. That was back in the days when it was actually a cool state to live in, like back in the 90s, right? What Newsom's done with that state, it's such a shame. It's really such a shame. But again, I mean, just looking at the prospects of Donald Trump, I mean, he was practically politically dead. They tried just about everything they could think of to not have him return the lawfare and slapping him with trumpet charges. I mean, they even took a shot at him, for God's sakes, right? So, but here we are, and here Donald Trump is, and really stirring up some shit around the world, and I'm loving him for it. I'm really loving him for it. So it's really inspiring to see what you guys did. Kind of like just as inspiring as what we saw in 1989 when the citizens of GDR actually overcame their totalitarian regime by just taking to the streets and speaking up. It is inspiring to hear those stories, and but you're totally right. We should never ever keep quiet. We should never ever shut up. Because there's too much we stand to lose, and we are talking about the future of our children, our grandchildren, and it's worth fighting for their freedom as well. Thank you so much for as of now. So now I would like to give my dear colleague Tom Vandendriessche the floor. He is a member of the Patriots and is also very invested in free speech. Have at it.
Thank you, Christine. I would like to grab the occasion to thank you for your speech. It's very inspiring. It's a very powerful message coming from the United States in accordance to exactly what J.D. Vance said and warned us for. Now, I want to dig a little bit deeper into the concept of freedom of speech, because it's freedom of speech, in my opinion. It's not about morality. It's not about. It's not an intellectual exercise. It fundamentally is about power, and it is freedom of speech is a citizen's right, and everybody has an equal right to it, and it is a tool to question those who are in power. So every time we see censorship, then by definition censorship is coming from those who are in power, who try to defend themselves from those who don't have power, but are using the tool of their citizens' right to freedom of speech to counter-speak those who are in power, and maybe in free elections, maybe even a change of government. Just imagine that in democracy, it should be the normal thing. But we have seen this over the last decades, over the last several hundreds of years. When the printing press was invented, then we saw the churches coming against the free distribution of books and wisdom and knowledge. And they even had this Index Librorum Prohibitorum, the index with forbidden books, which nobody could read. We have seen later on in history that books got burned or banned, or people who expressed so-called dangerous views took the punishment from several governments in numerous countries, as well in democratic governments, or so-called democratic governments, as well in authoritarian regimes or totalitarian regimes. We have seen it with the printing press, we have seen it with television. Only 30 years ago, I think, here in Belgium, television was strictly regulated, and there was only one state television. There was no freedom of speech on television. The journalists were politically appointed in the state television. Up till now, state television has more than 50% of the share of the market, and my party, Vlaams Belang, which is the second party in Belgium, has 1% of speaking time, because it is too dangerous for the regime to have us on television and just to express our point of view, which is different from their policies. We have seen this on radio, we have seen this in the last technological innovation, first the internet, then social media, where it was first applauded. I remember it was when Barack Obama did his campaign in 2008, I think, then everybody was rioting and applauding him for using this tool of social media to reach out to voters who normally didn't go out to vote. And for some reason, these were voters that were voting for him in particular. But that's another case. And then we saw the Arab Spring, where governments, dictators got toppled using the mobilization force of this technology. And then again, everybody was applauding for it. But then came Trump in 2016 and Brexit in a year before. And then suddenly, we got this narrative on misinformation, on hate speech, on disinformation, on lies, and so on. So it is it's basically the same mechanism over time and over countries, over regimes. It fundamentally is about those in power who want to stay in power, and they don't like citizens using their citizens' rights and their liberties to remove them from power. Now, if we look at what the European Union is doing in this regard, I already mentioned the social media situation. Well, social media, in my opinion, is really a magnificent tool of empowerment of citizens. Everybody can reach out to the whole world. But this is, of course, way too dangerous. And Digital Services Act, I was a shadow rapporteur for the ID group in last term, is really a magnificent example of how this European Union is turning into something that we never signed up to. They are always talking about the European values, and you look at the treaties, the European values are about general principles of civil rights, civil liberties, the rule of law. I think everybody in this room can adhere to this, but this is not what it's all about, what their policy is all about. What they actually are doing is outsourcing censorship to big tech companies. So it is also my firm opinion that big tech, or the free market, does not protect democracy. We have seen these big tech companies, these managers and shareholders, defending their own interests. And their own interests, well, it changes their policy towards their users, whether it's Joe Biden, and now when it's Donald Trump, and suddenly we see Mark Zuckerberg in the Capitol Hill when Trump was inaugurated. So I don't have a lot of confidence in the free market approach, which is more of a libertarian stance. So the more free market, the more free the people. I don't believe in this approach. I also don't believe in big government regulating everything that can be said or cannot be said. I think basically there are two exceptions on freedom of speech. That's one, it's a call to violence. I want to kill somebody, for example. This is clearly a breach of freedom of speech because it endangers the physical well-being of a human being. And second, is slander, libel cases, for example. You cannot spread lies which deteriorate the moral position of a person. So I think, but this is also within the framework of let's say, a broad approach to freedom of speech, which was upheld until recently. Recently, the last decades, it started in France with certain laws. It started in Belgium in the 1980s. I think it will be the same in other countries. Always the same narrative on racism, on disinformation. But basically, what they call hate speech, in my opinion, is just counter speech on their migration madness policies, because our people do not want to be replaced in our countries. These are our home countries. We don't like their policies. We want different kind of policies. So this is why they criminalize our alternative to their power position. Same with the EU Green Deal and the climate madness. Everybody can see what the results are. You have also mentioned it. There is no business model, working business model, where you have higher costs and be more competitive in global markets. It just doesn't make any sense. And I think I will wrap it up because I'm already speaking too long. But I think if you look at it from a broader perspective, I think just showing reality to people is the best argument for our kind of alternative policies. Their policies clearly don't work. We don't live in a very tolerant society because we need all kinds of laws to restrict fundamental rights of people. We need, even in my country, Belgium, we have, just imagine that, we have government officials filing fake job applications just to check if somebody may be discriminating against one another. So it's complete madness, and it reminds me a lot, I said it also in the lecture I gave on the Colonel Sanitaire, it reminds me a lot of the Deutsche Demokratische Republik. It was also called a democratic republic. They had numerous parties, but it were different kind of choices within the same communist framework. You could choose for more of the same. And this is exactly what they're aiming at. This is also what we are seeing in their power grab. This is why I mention it. So I want to stress this. It's a power grab from democracy to the aristocracy, where judges are determining what kind of policies we have, or to the bureaucracy and the technocracy. So in my opinion, the global evolution which is going on is that our political struggle, and I applaud that before you were on the woke side and we were not, but nevertheless we can meet each other, we can find some common ground in how we organize our democratic society. So in my opinion, all these old divisions, or the so-called right or the so-called left, it makes no sense anymore, because the so-called right and the so-called left is basically a uniparty. We have seen this exactly the same in the United States, policy-wise. What basically is different between, let's say, the neocons of George Bush Jr. and Barack Obama, for example. I can see it. They will both invest in the same kind of pro-migration policies, same kind of globalist policy, of hyper-globalism, open markets, which disconnects people from public life and destroys the social fabric in our societies. Now, I think, to conclude, that what is happening now in the United States is something that truly is a regime change. And where does this come from? It comes from the voters. The voters have seen the realities of the policies conducted by the Democrats and the Republicans, and ordinary common people have paid the price for that. They have paid the price for that in socio-economical deprivation and socio-cultural replacement. And they simply don't want it because it is not in their interests. And if we see J.D. Vance now coming to Europe and stating that there are no longer common values, shared common values with the regimes here in Europe, I think he's absolutely right. Because the regimes in Europe, they don't want democracy, they want their kind of policies over and over again, no matter what voters are voting for. And this is what we have seen in the last elections in Germany. 20% of the vote, or 21% rather. This is what we see in Belgium. My party has been a victim of the Colonel Sanitaire for over 45 years. So we are again at 23%, second party in Belgium, but yet the political system refuses the signal of the voters in the ballot box. This is what we have seen in Austria. So it is something that is symptomatical for the state of affairs in all of these democracies. In the United States, you took the chance by democratic means to overturn the old regime and to restore what the democracy that the founding fathers ever conceptualized in the Declaration of Rights and of Independence. And I think if we are fighting now a struggle here in Europe, then it has much resemblance at what has happened in the United States, and therefore I'm very positive about the future, because this system is not a strong system. It's a system that needs intimidation, that needs censorship, just to uphold itself. And this is exactly what the Deutsche Demokratische Republik was all about. They had an informant for every 82 persons. How much trust can you have in your own policies if you need to check everybody, if everybody is still aligned with the policy of the government? So I think this is a message of hope coming from the United States, and eventually, if you really break it down, our nationalism or populism, or no matter what people may call it, basically is about the restoration of the power of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom, for your remarks, and you're absolutely right. While they claim that they want democracy, they actually see democracy as an obstacle, which needs to be abolished. And I mean, especially in the last legislature, in this place in general, we've seen this, and the way they work, it's actually insane. So this place has nothing to do with democracy. Don't believe their lies. It seriously doesn't. So now I would like to give the floor to yet another colleague of mine, Mr. Piperea. He is from the group ECR, and I'm very pleased that you are here with us today, and you have the floor, please.
Thank you very much, Christine, for your invitation. I'm very glad to be here. Actually, I'm really honored to be here. And I must say that this presentation, this story was something not only interesting but also shaking. It's mind-blowing what happened. I'm starting by saying this. The only good thing which is at the present day doing the European Commission, the European Union, it's to regulate. It's to over-regulate. There is nothing good except the fact that we do know how to over-regulate. And I'm speaking about especially about the Digital Services Act. You know, the spirit of this regulation is to protect consumers in digital world, and also to protect loyal competition among the service providers, digital service providers. But what happened with this regulation, which is theoretically a beneficial one for the consumer, is the fact that the bureaucracy and the bosses of the European Commission perverted the spirit of this legislation. They established the so-called gatekeepers, which are compiled to do censorship against the content on internet, and also they allow the so-called fact-checkers to tell us what is the truth, what is good or is not good to be online. And you know, I don't know if you've seen at least once in a lifetime a fact checker. I did not. For me, these kind of guys are very anonymous. I don't know who they are, so I cannot go after them in order to make them responsible for what they did. And also, I cannot oppose. I cannot have any objection of what they do. So the so-called factual truth they established is completely out of the control of the civil society, and also out of the control even of the courts. You know, I am a lawyer, and I can tell you that there is a single way to establish a truth, a judicial truth, when something is disputed, when something is in conflict. You go to the judge, you present the evidences to the judge, and the judge is saying what is the truth, what are the facts. There is no other way to be sure about the legitimacy of this kind of factual truth. So it's nothing good, it's nothing democratic with these so-called fact checkers, and you know what? European Union is paying not tens, not hundreds, spend billions of euros paying these fact checkers in order what to do to censor us, to check and verify whether or not we tell the truth. What kind of truth? That truth which is not contradicted the so-called independent science, the free and liberal mass media, and also the official truth told to us by the institution. Anyway, what was a very, very big surprise for me, a shock for me, was the fact that the German Ministry of Interiors has launched a so-called guiding compass for conspiracy thinking. Is effective starting 28th of February, meaning last week. If you wonder what is doing this so-called compass for conspiracy thinking, you know, Europe has in present day a lot of compasses for competitiveness, for conspiracy thinking, for war. Everything is with compass, you know, because if we don't have this compass from the EU, we cannot find our path. Anyway, what is this compass intending to do? Is to hear people, to give them advices based on the so-called real needs in cases of small chat or small talk at home with family or with neighbors or with relatives, and in case these family, neighbors, relatives are using conspiracy theories. And in this case, that people, which could be probably affected about the so-called conspiracy theory, need support. From whom? From the authorities, from the officialities. You know, I wonder if this is not the first case in the world and in history when somebody did identify a conspiracy theory. Not only identify, but separate it from other kind of ideas and put it on the microscope and see, this is conspiracy and this is the truth. You have to go back to the truth, including in cases of banning your family, because otherwise you cannot be free. How kind of liberty is this? Anyway, the German authorities believe that people are not able to discern between truth and conspiracy theory, and in order to come to their support, they offer them therapy, advice, confidential guidelines. I'm not sure that you cannot you could be trustful in this so-called confidentiality because of the fact that we are speaking about online discussion. We are speaking about fact checkers. I don't know if somebody can trust authorities in what they say that these kind of advices and information are confidential. Anyway. The free thinking of man is cancelled practically from the start because, you know, those guys says that you don't know what your needs are. You don't know what your beliefs are. Let us tell you how your needs are, how your beliefs are, which are the real needs of you. So practically you make people to be again kids. You infantilize the man. You don't trust people, regular people, that they have the maturity to think about what their needs are. Yeah, and don't think about this plan, this compass are referring to the real conspiracies, because there are real conspiracies. I'm speaking about plotters, I'm speaking about the shadow directors of coups, counter-revolution, economic assassination, invented crises and programmed wars. No, it is actually about the conspiracy terrorists. It's about those people who try, more or less effectively, to expose conspiracy, to expose it. Things that have generated, you know, all the secret services of the world and history. It's about how to fight against conspiracy. So conspiracy do exist. I'm asking this: who are most dangerous? Those people which are the plotters, the real conspiracies, or the theorists of the conspiracies? And you know, I must tell you this: this is Stasi. This is a kind of Stasi. You know, the old KGB used to make children report their parents for conspiracy against the Soviet system. So did the Communist Party of China under Mao Zedong. So did the Romanian Securitate. Let me tell you something else, something very odd that happened to the people of EU. Alongside the terms of disinformation and misinformation, which are properly used in legislation for protecting the consumers, an Orwellian word just emerged. Instead of telling the truth, there are people like Monsieur Emmanuel Macron, which says that we better use the noble lie. Actually, is verbatim said by Mr. Macron. And you must remember what a former president of the European Commission used to say. I'm speaking about Mr. Jean-Paul Juncker. He said something like this: when things get serious, you have to lie to them. So it's about the noble lie instead of the truth. What the Central and East European people, like me, missed the most in communist era was the lack of freedom of speech. It seems that the West European peoples, who have not had this totalitarian experience for almost 80 years, do not see or hear or smell at all the deadly danger of the suppression of freedom of expression, freedom of speech. It is of paramount importance that we urgently restore the right to freedom of expression. And as a conclusion, let me tell you this. A verse from the Gospel of John. And ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Gheorghe. By the way, do you guys know what the difference is between a conspiracy theory and reality?
6 weeks.
About 6 weeks, exactly. That's the difference. So I would like to open up the floor for questions. Please, chip in, ask away. Please, Herman Catch.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Desiree. Thank you, Christina. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for this event. It's very important because it's the main topic. I would say we have two topics now where our life really depends on, and it's immigration and it's free speech. And from free speech, we need this free speech because it's the only way really to amend the disaster that they have created in this last 20, 25, 30 years. They want to block it by any means. We are seeing. I was very impressed. I was in Romania on Sunday, on Saturday, and the demonstration. It was a huge demonstration. Many people, very powerful, very impressive. And on the next day, on Sunday, I had to fly to Madrid. I talked to a good friend of mine who's a journalist, a very good journalist, a journalist who reads German papers yet, which is not anymore too frequent, and he read all the Spanish papers, and he had read many foreign papers, and he had no clue that there had been a demonstration in Romania. The demonstration of Romania with 300,000 people in Bucharest was not by any means, there was no clue of this demonstration in not one of the papers he had read on this Sunday. That really says a lot of how far they are going with their censorship, because it's pure censorship, and it shows also the interest why it's so decisive, the network for us, and it's so decisive for them. Thierry Breton knows it very well, what we are talking about. They want really to kill these places, these fissures where we have possibilities of getting something to know what they don't want us to know. And it's very important, as I say, we are in a very dangerous moment because they are in panic, and so they are able to do anything, by any means, for preserving the power they have. The power they have depends only on the narrative is theirs only. You see the aggressivity you see in this official papers of the European Union. You get the impression of how they are working on it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Thank you, by the way, that you actually traveled to Romania. I saw you on several pictures. Thank you that you did that. I would have loved to go there too, but I couldn't. So thank you. You are really a fighter too. Okay. Next question I have from Alexander Sell. Go ahead.
Well, you know, Mr. Turch, the revolution will not be televised.
Yeah.
And,
except in Romania.
I'm glad, Tom, that you mentioned the printing press, because that's what I always compare the social media to. You know, like it's kind of like the invention of the printing press. There wouldn't have been a Lithuanian or a Reformation without the printing press, because it allowed to break the monopole on the information by the Catholic Church. And so this allowed us also, our party AFD, we started in 2013, and it wouldn't have been possible without the internet, without social media. I remember in 2010, 11, 12, I was always reading the reader comments below articles in the newspapers, and they didn't edit them, they didn't censor them. So you read the articles, and then you could read the readers commenting and seeing, oh, I have the same opinion, and this is also where I first found out about this founding a new party. And so without social media, there would never have been an AFD. And that's how we became successful, and they noticed that, and that's why they started this huge crackdown on social media, censoring everything. And especially Twitter now, because Twitter, with Elon Musk and with his investment, he has invested in free speech, and they are now trying to crack down on Twitter. And for that reason, we actually, our group in this parliament, we proposed to give the Sakharov Prize to Elon Musk.
Yeah.
And I'm also glad that other groups followed our lead. And they, of course, they didn't agree, they didn't give the Sakharov Prize to Elon Musk, but they gave it to a Venezuelan, Edmundo Gonzalez, because of he's an opponent of Maduro in Venezuela. And I always told them in the committees, I told them, well, what is Edmundo Gonzalez using to publish his opinion in Venezuela? X, of course. He's using Twitter. Without Twitter, there would be no Edmundo Gonzalez. And this is the same that we are seeing here. But now that we have the chance to talk to you, being an American, US American, I have a question. What do you think about the chances of Democrats? I mean, I hear in the news about the Democrats. What are they doing? They must be regrouping, and there must be a backlash. Now, I'm just worried that this is just a period of 4 years for Donald Trump, and afterwards we will have the deep
JD Vance.
And
Then we'll have JD Vance.
So this is just what I'm being a pessimistic. You know, I'm always afraid that this is just a one-term thing, and afterwards it will be back to the same, and we won't have the support that we have at the moment from the U.S.
It's the will of the people, and you know, I mean, look. There has been tremendous regime change in the United States, but that's because people woke up. And a lot has to do with, of course, social media. No one can underestimate how the Democrats, you know, and when they'll regroup and recover. There's always work. We can never let our guards down. We can never be complacent, right? And that's you know, why platforms like X and freedom of speech, right, is so valuable. And again, just to do the hard work, it's a new government. And again, the government has to prove itself, right? And so, and it's going to bat there. We'll see. But it's the will of the American people that will decide. But right now, it's just, there's so much optimism in the States. And we're just getting started. But we can never let our guards down. There are always enemies, like, around.
Let me go into that. Let me say a few words on your remark. Now, the Berlin Wall or communism came down due to Radio Free Europe. The freedom of speech is just a tool. It's the reality, the moral bankruptcy, the economic downfall, the political situation in the former Eastern Bloc, which made the system come down. And this is very, I think, very similar to what happens in the Western world, because the narrative in the Western world is that multiculturalism is magnificent, and free trade, unlimited free trade, is going to make everybody rich and we'll all become democracies. We have seen over the last 30 years that this is a blatant lie, and everybody is noticing it. Now, if you just question citizens who are not voting for us, they have exactly the same opinion on the grand scheme of things. And there's a difference between how people behave in public and how they behave privately. Back in the communist regime, everybody was a communist. Until the wall came down, and then nobody was a communist. And everybody looked around and said, where are the communists gone? It's exactly the same. It is liberal.
Except the European Union.
Yeah, well, but this is what I'm going to. It's exactly the same. The narrative is upheld by pressure, by intimidation, by censorship. But it's a non-credible narrative because people in their private lives are doing exactly the opposite as they are so-called supporting in public. I will give an example. Here in Flanders, we don't have any freedom of schooling anymore. But it's in the constitution that there's freedom of schooling. Why is there no freedom anymore? Because if you want to have your child listed in a certain school, it used to be possible, but now it's no longer. You need to go to the government, and the government decides to which school your child is going to. Why is this? Because for some reason, all of these liberals want to send their children to white schools and not to these multicultural schools. You see, so in private, everybody is doing exactly the opposite as they are so-called adhering to in public, because it's bad for your personal career to denounce multiculturalism, for example, right? Or to go in the opposition against the ruling elites. So this is why I'm so positive about the future. No matter how long Trump will govern, maybe he'll do another 4 years. Who knows? But I'm very positive about the future because the system itself is corrupt, and everybody knows that it's corrupt. They have lost every credibility, and this will show itself in numerous fields. For example, education. We have seen the revolt of the the parents against the gender ideology being imposed on them, for example. It was in Virginia, I think, that the governor, it was the first win in Virginia after the January 6th events or festivities, how should we call it? So you see, you cannot deny people having, of taking the liberty to choose their own lives. And this is what democracy is all about. And therefore, nationalism is the restoration of democracy, because nationalism is the revolution against the feudal times where people didn't have any rights and didn't have any freedoms. So I'm very hopeful for the future. I hope Trump remains in power for long, but we'll see what happens. Our own freedoms will only be reconquered by ourselves. It will not be done by the Americans.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I would like to add to that. You just mentioned that the parents, really spoke out about this transgender madness that is going on in the schools, and I'm really telling you that is pretty much the only positive aspect of the lockdowns of the schools. That it was for this whole COVID madness, right? When they locked the school downs, now the parents were at home with their kids. And for the very first time, probably in a long time, they became aware of what their kids are being taught in school. So if there's ever been anything good about this whole COVID madness, this is probably it, that the parents became aware of that. Coming back to your question, Alexander, asking what will Democrats do? Will they regroup? Well, at this point, I don't see any regrouping done. They haven't even realized yet why they even lost in the first place. They're so preoccupied, and they're doubling down on their crap, and they're so preoccupied with their DTS, Donald Trump syndrome, they don't even have time to actually take a deep dive into why they lost. And I pray to God every single day that they will never figure it out. And then we must be on a winning streak. Okay, is there, yes, please.
Yeah, thank you very much for the interesting talks. I had a question for Mrs. Fixler. We have touched on the topic of outsourcing censorship. Until recently, it's been very clear that the NSA, for example, and Silicon Valley are revolving doors. We also saw that in America, the censorship issue was like there was a problem with the First Amendment, so they tried to outsource it via Europe, and so Europe had to punish the social media companies. And I just wanted to ask, how do you think the Trump administration is going to deal with the outsourcing and the depoliticizing of censorship? How is he going to punish these non-political actors when they infringe on free speech? Thank you.
Doge. I mean, let's just call this out. We've got Elon Musk, pretty much, in the administration. And you're seeing increasingly Silicon Valley admit their errors. And remember something, like, I'm not comparing myself to Mark Zuckerberg or to an Elon Musk or Mark Andreessen, right? But what we do have in common, we were all Democrats. And it was during the COVID time where you're just seeing, right, things just didn't make any sense. And so now you have that seminal Joe Rogan interview, Zuckerberg and Joe Rogan, where Zuckerberg calls everything out, right? And it's all out there. You have the Twitter files, Facebook, documents. So I would say this, that, certainly for many reasons, there are all different reasons, like, wanting to be on the right side of the Trump administration, wanting to do right by their clients, their consumers, confessing to be more, to resonate more. I think that, as Mark Andreessen said, increasingly what you're seeing from Silicon Valley is that there's no longer two different people, a private and a public persona, right? That whole virtue signaling, right? That people are now talking up, speaking up more because the government is not stepping on their neck. So I think that's a movement that will continue. Time will tell. But clearly, Elon Musk and his objectives, you know, both on reducing government spend to NGOs and outsourcing censorship, or, you know, outsourcing left-wing ideology, that is waning, right? It's not completely dead, right? And I just, you know, you can never let your guard down, but the U.S. is just, you know, gaining its stride in the opposite direction to, you know, loosen up. Time will tell. And at the end of the day, right, it is very much about the economy. Right? It's, you know, the most important thing for this administration and to, you know, for Americans to continue to back this government is, you know, number one, the affordability crisis, you know, again, border control, right? It's just, you know, ensuring that we have peace. You know, so there are a lot of, like, those are the priorities right now, and at the end of the day, as James Carville said, although he was a Democrat, you know, it's the economy, stupid. And so, you know, America has to, you know, continue its growth trajectory. That is what is most important.
May I add something to that? If I could give some suggestions for the Trump administration, maybe you can pass it, but I think what is fundamental that in modern democracies, 50% of all voters, their primary source of information is social media. With first-time voters, it's 80%. So if you look at the market sizing of Meta, for example, then it's simply, it's not a free market. There is no competitor for Meta, for Facebook, for Instagram. There is basically no competitor. You have different niche markets where users are locked in. You cannot communicate from one platform to the other, from LinkedIn, for example, to Twitter. But it could be the same video, the same text message you want to distribute to an audience. So I would suggest that, and maybe this change can come from the United States, is that interoperability is key. If we send a text message to each other, we can use different apps, but yet we can send the message to each other. This should also apply to social media companies. So you don't get a user lock-in or a lock-out of users. And this is, I think, one of the most fundamental ways to break the power of these big tech companies, because the power must be broken. Because we have seen that they either misuse the power themselves via direct censorship or via indirect censorship, for example, shadow banning, manipulating the information flows between politicians and citizens or citizens amongst each other. Who gets to see what, based on what reasoning? Nobody knows. There must be transparency on these algorithms, and users must be in charge of their own timeline. They must determine whether to use the algorithm that is being proposed or not. So I think this is some fundamental change. So I think there needs to be regulation, but regulation with the aim of strengthening and empowering citizens in their civil rights, not of silencing them.
Thank you.